On this episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, kind of really want to look at something in detail, folks, and we're going to talk about, is the Atlantic Coast Conference in trouble? On Carolina Sports Guy, we do cover 5 schools in the ACC: Clemson, NC State, Wake Forest, Duke, and North Carolina. Before we get into today's content, make sure you subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Pound that like button, hit that bell notification to be notified of future videos like this. And hey, by all means, folks, leave me some dialogue. I love talk, the banter back and forth. Okay, folks, I just really, this conference realignment situation, it's got a lot of people on pins and needles. If you look at other YouTube channels or sports talk radio or going online and Googling, this really gets a lot of views and a lot of clicks. I kind of kept away from it until it actually happens. We can actually look at schools like East Carolina and Charlotte in the American Athletic. I think they're set in stone for right now. And if they were ever to move up or have their conference dissolved, it's going to be quite a bit of time before that happens. And the Sun Belt, having Coastal Carolina and having a Appalachian State, I think they're kind of set where they are. I don't think they're moving up or going anywhere anytime soon. So that leaves us knowing South Carolina set in the SEC. That's not going to change. They're where they are, making the money they make. I think you can really look at the case for 2 schools. One is Clemson. Clemson, in my opinion, is going to be SEC bound. Now, they already have South Carolina, but Clemson's a name brand. And if the SEC picks off Clemson from the ACC, it's kind of a death blow. And I say it's not the end of the reality, but it probably is the best football school that the ACC has, and it would be a big loss. The other program to me that's even more valuable, and they're probably going to be coveted by both the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, being an ACC guy, I don't want North Carolina going anywhere. I want them staying put, but not at the expense, if the ACC gets left behind, that it's a second-rate conference. If the conference is going to fall apart, and North Carolina is one of those couple of schools out of the ACC that move on, I prefer them to be in the SEC. I think they could survive better football-wise in the Big Ten, but those brutal cold games and then having to play the Pac-12, USC and UCLA, I just think being the fact that you got Kentucky and Tennessee, and by the way, they say Tennessee is not really a fan of having North Carolina join on board. I think it has a lot to do with recruiting. And having South Carolina and Georgia makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Now, there's a rumor that not just Clemson and North Carolina, that maybe Florida State and Miami. I don't think Florida wants Miami in. I don't think they have a problem with Florida State. It's going to be interesting. Now, the Virginia thing, if I was the Big Ten, Virginia makes a lot more sense because of being an AAU school. In fact, to me, if the Big Ten was going to raid the ACC and take a couple, it would be North Carolina and Virginia, or North Carolina and Duke. It's going to be 2 of those 3 schools, and it's definitely going to be, Carolina's going to be one of them if they take them. Now, saying that, the SEC takes North Carolina, and let's say they were to take Clemson and take Florida State and Miami. To me, instead of Virginia Tech, to me, seems more of a fit for the SEC than Virginia. But that's my opinion. It's more of a football school, more of an SEC crowd, in my opinion. They make the most sense. Yeah. Now, to me, NC State makes the best SEC sense, but North Carolina is totally a bigger brand. Their basketball and everything, that makes the most sense. And Duke would be smart, but I don't think the SEC is looking at that. They already got a struggling Vanderbilt in football, and Duke only brings basketball, and it is a top premier school. If it goes anywhere, it would be the Big Ten. But I really feel that Virginia Tech makes more sense than Virginia. And hey, folks, people aren't looking at Georgia Tech. They've been weak in sports lately, but Georgia Tech fits. They were in the SEC years ago, but the Big Ten's kind of covered the Atlanta market, and it is an AAU school. So it's going to be interesting to see what Notre Dame does. But the one thing I wanted to bring up is, if North Carolina is a school that does go to either the SEC and the Big Ten, and let's say they take Duke or Virginia, but let's just say it's Duke, what does NC State do? because definitely if those two go to the SEC, Big Ten's not taking NC State. Now, yeah, if Carolina and Duke were to go, or Carolina and Virginia were to go to the Big Ten, maybe if the SEC wanted a North Carolina market, they could go for an NC State. I don't know. I mean, I think North Carolina's the one school they're really trying to poach with Clemson. But it really, NC State's going to be left hanging on. And Wake Forest as well. And Wake Forest is an AAU school. It's prestigious, private, classy school, great school. And it's a shame they're going to be left out. I don't think they're weak like a Washington State and Oregon State in the Pac-10, or I'd say Northwestern in the Big Ten, although they've had better chances, but academic speaking, under Vanderbilt in the SEC. But Wake Forest is that academic school, and they have standards, and a lot of times it's harder for them to win in certain sports. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'd love to see the ACC hold on. And really what kills me is I've seen people, and I will just miss an article in a heartbeat. If you're a fan of the school, I'm not going to apologize. Some people said Louisville makes a lot of sense in the Big Ten. No, they don't. Nebraska is the only non-AAU school that's in the Big Ten. Louisville's academics are nowhere on par. I don't care how much money they make. SEC, I can see them coming calling there. But to me, Louisville makes more sense in the Big 12 because of Cincinnati and West Virginia. But in saying that, I hope the ACC sticks together. I don't think Notre Dame's going to ever join. They've got 14 schools. I don't know. And the problem with the ACC is, who do you poach? Nobody's leaving the SEC, and nobody's leaving the Big Ten now. And the Big 12, some of the better schools to take away, they're kind of holding pat. They're a little far too west. They're not going anywhere. Pac-12 is a little too far. And that means you have to bring up somebody from the lower division. That's only going to weaken your conference now. Even though the Big 12 just did that with the likes of UCF and Cincinnati and BYU and who was the other, Houston. I don't think the ACC can afford to go and take East Carolina or Memphis, although I'd love to see East Carolina in the ACC. But they're really kind of standing pat at 14. And they can't really afford to lose more than a couple of schools. And I could see them losing as many as 4. And if both conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, get involved, they could lose as many as 6. So for us people living in the Carolinas, I hope that doesn't happen. I know you South Carolina people, if Clemson goes to the SEC, you don't have anything else to do with the ACC. But in North Carolina, whether North Carolina goes to the Big Ten and the SEC, and if they take Duke with them, you're still looking at an NC State and Wake Forest getting left behind in a weaker conference. And to me, that's sad. I hate to see that happen. Okay, folks, what do you think of today's video? Do you think the ACC is going to be able to stay in pat? Or do you think the Big Ten or the SEC is going to come in and poach a Clemson or North Carolina or Duke? Leave me some comments. I love the dialogue. Pound that like button. Hit that bell notification to be notified of future videos like this on college sports or anything in the Carolinas. And we'll see you next time on another episode of the Carolina Sports Guy. And don't forget to subscribe.